Hey artists! While the time lapse of Vi is running in the background, I want to talk about fan art and how it can hurt your game portfolio. I think fan art is a very interesting topic because it can be very useful in one context but not always in other. And I know that many argue that professional artists have fan art in their portfolios too. So let me explain. For example, if you are an artist on YouTube or social media and you want more visibility, then fan art can be a great tool. People already know the character, they recognize it faster, and that often helps to get more attention. But when it comes to your portfolio and applying for a job in the game industry, I think the situation is a bit different. So I want to talk about where fan art can be helpful and where it can also become a problem, and why I personally think original characters and original assets are the stronger choice if your goal is work in the game industry. And at the end, I will give a short conclusion with my honest opinion on how I think artists should use fan art in a smart way. I think one reason fan art performs well online is very simple. People already care. If you create work based on Arcane, League of Legends, Overwatch, Marvel, or any other well-known IPs, the audience already has an emotional connection to it. So they are much more likely to click on it, react to it, or share it. That is why fan art can be useful if your goal is visibility. Especially on YouTube, Instagram, or ArtStation, recognizable characters can help people discover you faster. And I think that is totally valid. As artists, we all want to be seen. We want people to notice our work. We want to build an audience. And fan art can definitely help with that. So I don't think fan art is bad at all. I just think it is important to understand what it is good for and what it is maybe less good for. This is where I think many artists mix things up. What gets attention online is not always the same thing that makes your portfolio stronger. Those are two different goals. If your goal is reach, then fan art is very effective. If your goal is to show studios that you're ready for professional game work, then original work is often the better choice. Because studios are not mainly asking, can this artist create a known character? They are also asking, can this artist make strong design decisions? Can this artist create appealing original work? Can this artist think beyond copying something that already exists? Can this artist solve design problems in a production context? And that is where original work often has more value, because original work shows more of your own thinking. It shows your taste, your design ability, and your judgment much more clearly. I think the biggest risk in fan art is that you are almost always compared to the original one, and that is a very hard game to win. When you work on a popular character like Vi, people already know exactly how she should look. They know the face, the attitude, the proportions, the energy, the style, everything. So the moment your piece is seen, it is immediately measured against a very strong reference. And if you do not hit that known style, it actually can become counterproductive, because then the reaction is not, oh, interesting work. The reaction becomes more like, it does not feel like the original character, or the original character looked much better. And that can be dangerous, especially in a portfolio context, because instead of showing your strengths, the piece starts highlighting the gap between your version and the original. That does not mean fan art can never be strong. Of course it can, but I think it has to be done very, very careful. For a portfolio aimed at the game industry, I usually think original characters and original assets are the safer or often stronger choice. The reason is simple. With original work, people judge the piece more on its own qualities. They look at the design, the execution, the appeal, the style, the craftsmanship. They are not consistently compared to an existing famous version. That gives you more room to show what you are actually good at. It also makes it easier to present yourself as a designer and not only someone recreating existing designs. And I think that matters a lot in the game industry, because even if you work from concept art in production, studios still want artists who understand form, design, clarity, and visual problem solving. Original work often shows that much better. So if someone asks me what to focus on a portfolio, I would usually say, if you want attention, fan art can help. If you want to get into games, original work is often the better choice. I still think fan art has its place. It can be fun, it can attract viewers, and it can sometimes show that you understand a certain style. But I think it should be used strategically and not as a foundation of your whole portfolio. More like an extra piece or a visibility piece or a side project that supports your online presence. Because if your whole portfolio is mostly fan art, then it can start to send the wrong message. It can look like you are more focused on existing IPs than on original artistic thinking. And depending on the studio, that may not be ideal. So I think the smarter approach is balance. Use fan art if it helps you to get seen, but build your own portfolio mainly around original work that represents the kind of job you actually want. That way you get the best of both worlds. I think fan art becomes much more interesting when it is used in a selective and intentional way. What I mean by that is this: professionals usually do not build their whole identity around fan art, but they may use it here and there for a specific reason. Sometimes it is simply passion. Maybe there is a character, a film, a show, or a game that really inspired you, and creating fan art around it is your way to show appreciation. And I think this is completely valid. It can also make your work feel more human, because when someone looks through your portfolio full of strong original work and suddenly sees one fan art piece based on a character they know and love, that can create a different kind of connection. It can trigger emotion. It can make a viewer pause for a second and feel something. And I think that has value as well. So I don't think fan art has to disappear completely from a professional portfolio. I just think it should feel like a conscious accent and not the whole foundation. Another reason fan art can still be useful is that it sometimes shows a bit more about you as an artist. Original work shows your design thinking, which is important. But fan art can sometimes show your taste, your influences, and the things that shape your creativity. Maybe it shows what kind of stories you are connected with. Maybe it shows what kind of characters stay in your mind. Maybe it shows what kind of worlds excites you enough that you want to spend extra time recreating them. And I think that can be interesting for people looking at your work. Not necessarily because it proves production skills on its own, but because it gives your portfolio a bit more personality. It reminds people that there is a real artist behind with interests, preferences, and creative passion that can make a portfolio feel less cold and less calculated. So I think fan art can work well when it adds a bit more emotional context to the rest of your portfolio. I also think fan art can be used in a very practical way. Sometimes after doing a lot of original work, client work, or portfolio work with a strong strategic goal, it is nice to make one piece just because you genuinely want to. Not because it is the perfect portfolio move, not because it fits every career role, but simply because it refreshes your energy. And I think that matters more than people admit. A lot of artists burn out a bit when every piece has to be optimized for jobs, portfolio strategies, visibility, and professional positioning. Sometimes you need one piece that reminds you why you like making art in the first place. And fan art can do that. It can reconnect you with excitement, with play, and with emotional reason you became interested in art at all. So in that sense, I think fan art can also serve a very healthy purpose. Not as your main portfolio strategy, but as something that keeps your creative energy alive. I think the strongest fan art is not the kind that only tries to imitate perfectly. The strongest fan art usually still says something about the artist making it. Maybe it emphasizes a certain mood, maybe it pushes a certain shape language, maybe it focuses on a side of a character that the artist is personally connected with. That is where it becomes more interesting, because then it is not just a copy, it becomes an interpretation. And I think that is much stronger way to approach fan art, especially as a more experienced artist. At that point, the goal is not only that you recognize the source, it is to show what you see in it, why this character mattered to you, what visual quality you respond to, what you want to bring forward in your version. That creates more depth and it gives the piece more artistic value. Another thing I think about is rhythm in the portfolio. If every piece is trying to prove exactly the same thing, the portfolio can become a bit flat. Even if the quality is high, the experience of looking through it can start feel too predictable. So sometimes one fan art piece actually help create contrast. It can break rhythm in a good way. It can introduce a familiar emotional anchor. It can give the viewer a short moment of recognition in between more original or more design-focused work, and that can make the portfolio more memorable. Of course, this only works if your portfolio is already strong and clear, but when that foundation exists, I think one well-placed fan art piece can function also like a change of pace in a film or in the music. It gives the viewer a slightly different emotional note, and that can help the whole work feel more alive. So to sum it up, I don't think that fan art is something artists need to avoid completely. I just think it is important to understand what role it should play. If you're using it for attention, it makes sense. If you're using it to express passion, that also makes sense. And if you're using it only here and there to add emotion, personality, or a human side to your portfolio, I think it can actually work very well. The key is just that it should support your identity, not replace it. For me, that is the real balance. Let original work carry your professional direction, and let fan art appear where it adds energy, emotion, or personal meaning. That way it becomes strength, not distraction. So yeah, those were my thoughts on the topic of fan art in portfolio work. Thanks a lot for watching and see you next time.